So good morning. I'm Pam Tipton. I'm Senior Director of Custom Programs here at Emory University's Goizueta Business School, and we're excited to have you with us for our Business Over Breakfast webinar series. And I do want to extend a special welcome to those who might be joining us for the first time this morning. So, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, on occasion, we do like to feature more career-focused sessions, and today's session is no different. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a session on your personal board of directors. And today's topic focuses on something that I know a number of us have experienced, and that is those in-between times in our career and how you might take advantage of those. So whether you are currently employed or not employed, whether you're actively seeking your next role, or you might be navigating either a voluntary or involuntary pause in your professional journey, today's conversation is designed to equip all of us with the mindsets, the skills, and some strategies to not just survive, but to thrive during those in-between times. It's exciting for me because I personally took a mid-career sabbatical, becoming my own in-betweener, if you will, and I can attest to the importance of embracing those in-between times as an opportunity for personal growth, personal growth and self-discovery, frankly, and importantly, skill and experience building. So I am also excited to welcome to the mic this morning, Monique LaRue Wilson, a creative strategist and relationship manager, to explore how we maximize those in-between times and to support that career shift, to expand your skill set. What approaches might keep you learning and connecting and engaging with people, and activities and subjects that feed and inspire you. So as with all of our webinars, Monique will spend the next 25 to 30-ish minutes sharing her practical insights and her own experiences. And throughout the session, she invites you to post your questions to the Q&A box or to the chat. It's a little easier for us to manage through the Q&A box, but go ahead and post to the chat if that's where you're comfy doing so. And we also reserve some time at the end, as always. Before we get started on Monique's session, however, we always like to highlight a few things. And if you're seeking to expand and sharpen your skills, I really encourage you to check out our fall lineup of courses. But we've got a new addition. We are super excited that demand has been so strong for our executive coaching diploma program that we have just opened up an in-person cohort that will be kicking off this fall. And this is such breaking news. We don't actually have the application link up yet. You'll hear from Heather Defoe, my colleague, at the end of today's webinar to learn a little bit more about that. I also encourage our women among us to really consider attending or nominating someone for our Executive Women's Leadership Program. It is focused on your strategic narrative with a lot of emphasis on strategic thinking, frameworks such as the 5 I's and strategy mapping, how you carve that into an impactful narrative. And importantly, how do you learn how to influence and navigate and advocate for yourself? So we got information on that posted in the chat. We'll post the full calendar of our programs as well. Don't forget to check out our 4 credit courses. And we look forward to today's session. Monique, thanks so much for being with us this morning. We're super excited to have you. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Pam. I am so excited to be here this morning and having this discussion. So thank you, everyone, for joining this morning and participating in the Business Over Breakfast series. Today, I want to dive into the topic of the moment, how to make the most of the in-between times in your career. A topic that is deeply personal to me. Deeply personal because I am living in my in-between. Take a look at the slide. It's a photo of my mother and me taken in 2019 during a photo shoot I planned for her 75th birthday. I set this up because I desperately wanted to capture the moments with her while she still knew who I was. We had so much fun that day. I'll tell you more about that. This image is significant to the discussion this morning because it represents a pivotal in-between moment in my career journey, emphasizing the importance of navigating transitional phases with purpose and resilience. I have many in between career stories to tell. These stories didn't just begin, though, with the major one I'll discuss throughout this talk today. I've experienced numerous transitions on this journey, but I must take ownership and accountability for why this has happened in my life on so many occasions. While external factors played a role, many instances were influenced by my personal paradigms, self-image, habits, and beliefs about myself that led to the numerous starts and stops. We will never, lesson to myself, outperform the image of self. And I'm still working on this. So although I look poised and proper in this photograph at the time, I didn't even recognize the person I saw after that picture was given to me. Today, I feel more comfortable with her because I'm doing the work during my in-between moments. And I kind of like her a lot. Okay, so let's jump into the good stuff. Take a breath. It's early, but just flow with me. As you can see, I've got a depiction of what could possibly be your in-between career moments. Can you imagine spending 7 years navigating your in-between period? It might seem crazy to be in that phase for so long, but during the years you see on the screen, I worked various contract jobs, consulting jobs. I cleaned house. I drive Uber. I took roles that I didn't get paid very well for, some that might seem belittling or beneath my qualifications, but it was necessary. And I also still hadn't found during those times the significant work in my chosen profession. Another important necessity was that I needed flexibility and remote work to care for my mother in the way I thought that I should, which also played a role in my career situation. In 2017, I had to move back to Florida to care for my mother while I worked remotely as a senior customer success manager. 2018, 6 months later, after I made that decision, I was laid off, probably for the best, because a couple of things were happening at that point. In 2022, after the pandemic, I launched an extensive job search for a new role in customer experience and success. I secured interviews with top companies like Deloitte and another big UK law firm tech startup. Ultimately, I joined a leadership development startup here in the US. And again, with the startup. In March 2023, though, I unexpectedly got laid off from a job I had hoped to stay at for the rest of my career. I took about 3 months after that layoff to do some self-discovery while I had unemployment, but I also still had my mom to care for. On November 15th, 2023, my mother transitioned from her in-between. And I'm still processing that loss while I figure out how to do life without her. August 1st, today, I'm still looking for that next right role in my in-between. So here's what I want to share with you today and tell you now. It is possible to endure during your in-between. It can get hard. It will get hard, seemingly impossible for some. It may not be ideal for many, and hopefully for most of you on this call, you will never have to experience such a long in-between period unless it's by choice, kind of like Pam. Your in-between are grounds for great expansion and self-discovery. So I would pose to use it wisely. There are 3 areas of attention this morning that became my friends. I paid a lot of attention to these friends, like stayed up late with these friends. I went out, to the park with these friends. I developed serious relationship with mindset, skill set, and level set. Each represented a vital aspect of personal and professional development for me. I've named or coined this approach the in-between careers methodology because I love a good methodology. I'm an adjunct professor. In order to kind of share information easily with some of my students, I kind of create these methodologies for memorable and a practical, memorable framework that they could kind of grasp quickly. Mindset, start with the inner work because it's the foundation, the 3 areas, and crucial for your well-being. This is a time of self-discovery. Ask yourself, what do you truly want? Skill set. Once you're clear on your desires and find peace through inner work, it's time to take action. If you're struggling to find the next opportunity, identify the gaps in your skills and consider all the possible areas that you may need to skill up. And then level setting, big, big area for me, staying engaged and creative. I believe being creative during the time of those in-betweens really saved my life. I'll talk to you again about, in 2017, my life took a serious turn when my mother was semi-diagnosed with early onset dementia. It pushed me into the intense inner work that I was going to need to do. Though I wish that were voluntary, it was work that needed to be done. I also left the solid foundation and career advancement potential of a job I had at American Express to join the tech startup that I stepped into as a relationship management professional in customer experience and success. This decision came after much contemplation, and it felt deeply right. It also offered a 20,000 salary increase, a reminder to myself to never leave a job solely for money. It turned out, though, to be the best move for my personal self-growth. I felt my career was poised to soar. Around this time, I began noticing rapid changes in my mother's behavior at home, and it required me to get my mind right. I reached out to friends, clinicians, I devoured books to keep my sanity and to stay positive. And lastly, and something I still practice today, is resilience. While I believe I'm naturally resilient, I also know that it can be cultivated through gratitude, healthy emotional expression, constructive behavior, grit, and growth are essential. If you have them, great. If not, you can develop them. Let's talk a little bit about the inner work. Oh, I talked about the inner work. We're going to talk about the outer work. During the in-between period, the outer work is still happening. I mean, the inner work is still happening while you're working on the outer work. I spent a solid 6 years working full-time, both in my profession and with various odd jobs that I shared on the earlier screen. It provided me the opportunity to care for my mom, but in all of that, I lost sight of myself. My mother's well-being and my financial stability for her became my guiding stars. To be honest, I felt lost and disconnected. The rapid advancement of technology and the demand for specialized skills in various fields left me feeling like I was in a fog because I couldn't even think about any of that. Being in between can often leave you feeling a bit disoriented. So I looked for ways to remain relevant while I was caring for my mother. I kept investing in myself. Coaching, directly in my consulting business, finding opportunities to really just make sure I could bolster what I was doing in the in-between. I just recently became certified as a Salesforce consultant, which helps me help nonprofits and other organizations run their Salesforce implementation projects. And so I was happy to be skilling up in that area. I'm not an admin yet, but it's on the list. And I keep looking for ways to stay ahead and digging into new technology, AI, all of those things. At one point during this in between, I would volunteer for organizations that I had a passion for without asking for a role. If an opportunity presented itself, then I would consider it. But it was a great way to stay engaged while doing good. Also for kicks, drive the mover. So after I had done the inner work, after I focused on the outer work, skilling up, finally, you want to remain engaged and creative. So when I say remain engaged, I am talking about not isolating. Don't isolate. Although I'm advising you to stay connected, I must admit that I've often isolated myself at the start of my own career start and stops. This tendency is a personal paradigm of mine. When I isolate, I'm trying to sort things out in my head without outside influences. As a result, I don't reach out or stay connected as I should in the early stages. I'm also not a social media expert, but it has been a valuable outlet for me to share my thoughts and feelings positively about this in-between period. I've been active on LinkedIn for a very long time, and this platform of choice has just been a staple in my life. I'm not focused on the gimmicks or specific posting strategies, just being my authentic self. And I often only post when it feels right to me, when I feel like I have something to say that will ultimately help others and impact others. I view LinkedIn and Instagram as personal branding tools. When aiming to stand out, remember to be more mindful, but always stay authentic. That's my best advice. What happens after you focused on the inner, the outer? You stayed engaged and creative. Now it's time for organized planning and activity. Regardless of how it looks, you're making progress. So I created this level set roadmap for myself. I also have great friends that have created a roadmap journals and things, 90-day journals that really help through this process as well. Started writing your goals down. That's not unfamiliar to a lot of people in a journal. It's part of my process. It was part of how I was able to get through my in-between. Every quarter, 90 days, create a list of 5 in-between goals for the next 12 months. Write them in present tense. I work at the Goizueta Business School, Emory. I achieve, I earn, I own. Then take your list and imagine that you could do any one of these things within the next 24 hours. And then identify what positive impact it could have on your life. And then that's the one thing that will probably stand out to you the most. You work on that goal, organize those tasks in a checklist form, and take action on a regular basis. So for example, some of those goals, I would say, I am the director in partnership for ABC Corporation. I'm working on the 3rd edition of my book, Baby, Your Gift Will Make Room for You, with more emphasis on the 3C technique methodology. I told you I loved a great methodology for creating transformative connections. I would say for these goals, I've scheduled 15-minute chats with everyone who has an HR title in my LinkedIn contacts. Specifically, reach out to experienced HR professionals for insights during your in-between period. Ask for feedback on your resume and tips for navigating this time. I remember about 3, 4 weeks ago reaching out to all of my HR contacts and asking them for the very 15 minutes I'm sharing with you today. So much value in how and what I learned about how I can move from the pivotal moment I was in, from losing my mom to what's next. I don't know what to do. My whole world was built around figuring out how I was going to do life with my mother. Now she's gone. You've got to find work. What does that look like? So, whether you're an older professional uh, pivoting and trying to find ways to get back on track, these are some of the tips that and actions that I took in order to just gain a little more insight to help me through this process. And then just kind of learn some strategic job search techniques as one of your goals, especially for older professionals. I think it's important that we figure out that certain things may not work the same way. So, how will you make the most of your in between? And I know this wasn't a very long conversation today, but I will say that my in between has looked very different every single time I had a start and a stop, a start and a stop. I want you to take this approach, this next time, this in between methodology, and use it as a way to build what that in between looks like for you. I don't know if I could go back and think about when the time happened, when I found out that mom really needed more assistance than I thought I was going to be doing. My career was just taking off. I had hit what do you call it, a milestone birthday. And I just knew I had all of these things planned to do, places I wanted to go. I was even contemplating moving to another city. And then I had to make very different decision. So let's talk about this inner work, this outer work, and this staying engaged. Take this with you. These are just practical steps, but again, your life will look or probably take on a different path, and you'll have to figure out if you have time for mindset work, if you have time to skill up, if you have the motions and everything necessary to even help you through this time. I want to share how you have purpose in your in between. I wish you well in your in between. I hope that my story and the approach, the methodology that I shared with you, very simply will help you embrace your transitions in a meaningful way. I'm still on my own in between, and while I hope it won't last too much longer, I have the tools to stay uplifted. I have people and support around me because I've built those things in my in-between times. I How do I want to leave you with this? Because it's such an important point in my life. This story of the in-between has truly changed who I am as a person, how I present myself, how I show up in the workplace. Know that your in-between is always going to be the moment in time where you can change who you are, change the lives of the people you're connecting with, So thank you so much for allowing me these moments today to share with you, um, yeah, how you can make the most of your in-between. I want to stay connected with you in any way possible and also be your in-between champion. I've got you covered in that area. If you want to stay connected, you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for spending this time with me this morning and the great folks at This Way to Business School and for participating in Business Over Breakfast series.
Monique, thank you for your inspiring stories, but we're not done yet. We've got some questions that come in
Yes.
either through the Q&A box or directly to us as hosts and panelists. And so I'd like to start with one that came in that's really resonating with me because of how you just closed kind of the talk portion. And that is, what strategies did you find to be the most effective in staying resilient and purposeful during this in-between time? Because I know for so many people, we think back to the pandemic, whether it's an in-between time or not,
Yeah.
resilience was one of those things that everybody was talking about. How do we stay resilient, right? So now you're in this personal thing. You don't have a whole bunch of people around you that are going through the same experience with you at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
What have you,
No, go ahead. I
go ahead.
love that question. I love that question, Pam. Uh, the first thing I will say before I go any deeper is get help for your mental well-being. So one of the strategies for me in staying and remaining resilient was that I knew I needed to get help. And so from counselors, therapists, I was working for um, an EAP technology startup. So I had resources available to me during that time. And so that was the first thing. So one strategy would be find the right resources to help in your mental state, especially going through something like caring for a parent or a loved one that um, is ill or has some long term, whether it's cancer, whether all of those things. You want to get the mental help, the counseling, the therapist, anything that you need to help you get through it, y'all. The other thing is I got an accountability coach. And he really helped me stay focused on goals to keep me moving. I was in such a place of just trying to get things done and just kind of out of just rote moving. I needed an accountability coach. So that was an investment in myself. I have great friends that are accountability coaches and they stayed with me. Yeah. This is a must-have strategy um, during the in-between. At least it was for me.
So Monique, I had another question I was going to go to, but I love what someone just posted in the chat. So Rachel said she'd actually never heard of an accountability coach. Can you say more about what that might look like, how you might look for one?
Yeah, so accountability coach it's a term that's kind of been used a lot lately. Like, so you've got accountability coaches, you've got executive functioning coaches, you've got career coaches, you've got all of them. I think all of them kind of function the same in certain areas, but an accountability coach could be a friend. It could be someone who's actually in business doing that, but someone who's going to keep you accountable for getting the work that you need to get done to move you forward, right? So you may have those goals that we talked about to get you through your in between. But every day it's like a struggle for you to get to the next step. An accountability coach on a weekly basis can really just help you stay on task as you move forward. Finding accountability coaches, I have a great friend that is accountability coach for me. I'm not sure he's doing that anymore, but they're there. I mean, I think getting searching LinkedIn, reaching out to friends and family, and even people at work and asking them if they would be your accountability partner, right? So that's another framing of that so that they help you stay. And then you can then in turn help them stay on task if you have the capacity to do that.
Right. I've got one more question kind of in that vein, and then I want to switch gears over to more towards the skill building, the outer work. Since we focused a little bit on the inner work right now, and I think that is so important to get your own psyche in the right frame of mind, if you will.
Yeah.
So in the case of a layoff, came in from one of our participants. Hang on, scroll back up. Nicole posted. In the case of a layoff, you might feel unworthy about that, because you've gotten laid off and getting that next great job opportunity. So you might also be embarrassed to tell others what really happened. How do you stay motivated when you're in those circumstances, and especially staying motivated to stay engaged with the external world, the outside world?
Great question. Great question. Staying motivated is a lot of inner stuff. You've got to work on some things internally, but I think that plays a role into also not being or feeling ashamed. Once you've done that inner work, you figured out like what do you truly want, figured out who you are as a person. I think it helps with the external stuff, like how you're showing up or how people may view you. I'm pretty bold and transparent about mine. Listen, I have multiple degrees. I'm skilled up. I've got experience in a lot of different areas, but there's no shame in doing what you have to do to take care of yourself and your family in these in-between times. So, staying motivated just requires you to go deep, to find resources and books and talk to people who can help you understand that you're worthy, regardless of where you are in your life. And just because you may have lost your job, it doesn't mean that you're worth less. It doesn't mean that your driving the Uber is a problem. I'll just share a quick story. I was in an Uber the other day and the woman said, "Oh, you're so eloquent." We had a conversation. I don't typically talk if I'm driving Uber, but I don't feel bad about that with my degrees, with the experience that I have. So don't let anyone shame you into thinking that you're any less because you have to do the things necessary to provide for your family, to provide for the loved ones that you have to care for, the mother that you may have to care for. I hope I did that some justice.
Oh, absolutely. And I would add to that, Monique, that with any layoff, there are always complex um, things going on that result in layoffs. And it may
Yes,
have
yes,
nothing to do with you as an individual person. I
it
was an
doesn't.
executive in a large Fortune 50 company for the first half of my career. And I unfortunately was in that position of having to tell someone they were being laid off. And I had an incredibly high performing team, but it was a percentage thing. It was a
Yeah.
peanut butter. Everybody's got to get rid of one. And it was terrible for me.
Yep.
And it was really hard to hold it together because I cared deeply about my team and they all were high performers. It was really hard. And so
Yeah.
to say, remember, those decisions come because of a whole lot of
Of
data
other
that
things.
have absolutely nothing to do with you. So
That's right.
I want to
Great.
switch gears because I know that a number of people are interested in this in particular, and there may be other questions in this vein. But what Gary asked a question. What did you use to identify your own skill gaps, experience
Mm.
gaps, etc., and determine if you needed certifications, and if so, which ones to get? And I love this question because this is the very question about the certifications in particular that I
Mhm.
was asking those that I took to coffee when I was in
Yeah,
between, because I'm
exactly.
making a career shift on purpose, but
Yes.
I just didn't know where to start. So I can't wait to hear your
No.
perspective.
Wonderful question. Pam, I mean, what's the guy's
Gary.
name who asked it?
Gary.
Gary. Wonderful question, Gary. So some of the tools, like I just did an assessment of myself and I know my strengths. I'm a relationship manager. I've got that. I can build relationships across the board. I'm good. What the gaps were for me were more of the technical kinds of things, the tools that some of my clients were using, the Salesforce, the HubSpots, the all of those technical things. The back end of those things I was missing, and I wanted to be more um, experienced or had more skills in those areas so that I could be more effective for my customers. So I just kind of created this map. Okay, after having conversations with other people as well, what are the areas that are trending right now? What are some of um, the software, whether it's AI, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Workday, what are some of the trends, the software that's really making an impact in corporations across the board right now? And from that, I kind of chose how I was going to move into these uh, opportunities to skill up and to be certified. So Salesforce was one of them for me because I'd used Salesforce in every job I've had. I also worked a lot with nonprofit organizations and government organizations, education, that were kind of infusing Salesforce and just needed the assistance to, to use that software better. And so I felt like that was the area that I should um, look into for getting certified. I always say to a group of folks that I talk to every Saturday, we talk about staying certified. That is something that you always want to do. Certifications are great. You may not have the opportunity to go back to school and get an advanced degree, but you could definitely find certifications in areas like even coaching. You can find areas for coaching as well and becoming a certified coach. And so just looking at those gaps, where do you want to fit in? Finding what that is, and then going for those things that you have interest in. And that would be the steps that I would offer for folks.
I think that is exceptional advice. And I'll add one thing to that that I learned in
Yes.
my journey with the folks I was talking with, and that is doing exactly what you suggested, Monique, and that is talk to folks who sit inside companies that, you not setting up the coffee because you're looking for a job, but rather just to gain insight about working there and asking those questions of them. If you were to
Yes.
hire someone, what certifications are important to you right now? Because where it landed for me was I didn't need to get certifications, wait until I found the role I was really looking for and then determine what was important for that
Uh,
particular role, right? For you with
yes.
Salesforce, that was
Yes.
absolutely the right thing to do because of where you were and what you were seeking to do. So it's different for every company
Exactly.
depending on the type of role you're looking for. So
It's going to
absolutely,
be different.
yep. This is an interesting spin on the conversation that's been going on in the chat. So I wanted to ask your opinion about it. And that is any ideas on identifying coaches to help build a business, not join a business, right? Build a business based on one's skill set and desire. It's been a challenge for me. My initial career coaching was aimed at corporate executive roles, but I learned
Mm-hmm.
that was not what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
insight there?
So I also have a consulting business that I've run simultaneously with the work that I've done. So in between career jobs, I put my consulting hat on because I'm not the type to just kind of sit and wait. Like I can go and ask, you know, other business colleagues, is there any work that, I could fit in and plug in at? So I'll put my consulting hat on. What I found over the years, though, is needing help to build that business in order for it to, i.e., maybe become the thing that you end up doing. Maybe it's not a corporate job. Maybe you've worked in corporate for some time and have decided to step out on your own and you need to get a coach to build that. I believe you could find the best coaches in alumni organizations. You've got Goizueta School of Business. They've got tons of graduates and people who are in business who are coaches who can coach people in their business as well. You want to look and participate in areas where you can do that. And one of the slides I talked about, that whole staying engaged and being creative. That whole staying engaged and being creative means that you're staying connected with people who can help you in your business. So whereas you may not have found that doing career coaching, because it was coaching towards your corporate opportunities, getting involved in organizations like, alumni organizations and other organizations that fit um, areas that you're interested in can also help you find the right business coach for your business.
Yeah, I agree there. I think there's also associations specifically for small business and startups, but I will put a quick plug in for here at
Yes.
the business school. We have a program in our Institute for Business and Society called Start Me, and it's also an amazing program. So I want to go towards this. Somebody also posted in the chat about, informational interviews are great. You
Mm.
mentioned during your the first portion of today's session that you would schedule these 15-minute coffees. I'm super curious to know, how did you structure those? Because 15 minutes flies by, especially when you're in a situation where, gosh, I might want to have somebody review my resume. Wow, I want to find out what the culture's like inside of this company. I want to find out about their career journey. There's all these different ways you can go. So how did you structure 15 minutes?
Pam, in all transparency, 15 minutes is the bait.
Of course.
Okay. It's the bait because number one, a lot of executives don't have time. They don't have much time. So asking for 15 minutes and sticking to your 15 minutes will ultimately get you to 30 and 45 maybe, right? And that's what happened for me because I actually literally wanted a 15-minute quick conversation. That's going to go by quickly. But I also realized that if they bought into the 15 minutes, they number one, read my message to them about why I wanted to. I believe they know that 15 minutes may not be enough. So I knew I got 30 minutes. I would at least have 30 minutes. And then you go in making sure that you have all your questions set aside, that you could go in, ask your questions, get the right answers. And what the beautiful thing, though, Pam, that happens is that you ultimately have a longer conversation. And then you're on the phone for an hour because now they're so engaged and pouring out into you that they want to see you win. You've got more time. So I would say ask for the 15 minutes because a lot of it, depending on their level, their status within the organization, and most of the folks that I had reached out to were senior level people, and 15 minutes was all they were going to give me. And it ended up being more time. So the strategy is gain the interest, get the bite first, see if they'll entertain it. Some people didn't respond at all. I didn't get people to respond at all. And that's okay, because maybe 15 minutes just wasn't something that they had. But the 6 or 7 people that I did get, it was rich. And still now connecting with them, we built a relationship. And so, yeah, it works. So I would say ask for the 15 minutes first and really stick to the 15-minute plan. So you may only get 2 questions out of that. Mine was, what do I do in the pivot? Like, at this point in time, with all the stuff going on in my world, what can I do in the pivot? 1, 2, 3. It was great.
Great. Yeah. And I love that you reiterated, stick to the 15, but then, you can always ask, do you have a few more minutes? I have one more question. Precious was saying, yes, be sure to offer to end at that 15-minute mark. There's a strategy that I personally employed during my in-between that was incredibly helpful. And I'd love for you to comment on leveraging volunteer opportunities,
Mm.
especially with nonprofits or your alma mater, to skill build. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. So, not during this in between moment, but one previous in between moment, I just didn't want to sit and not do something. I needed to work, and that period was going longer than I wanted it to. So I reached out to organizations, American Cancer Society, They've got a big volunteer, you know, programs running, um, uh, just any area where I could go in and just provide that service and knew I felt good about giving back. And that was it. And so if you have the time, I would invest that time in going to nonprofits and or other organizations, educational institutions, and give your time. So I employed that practice, and that ultimately gained me not a job, but connections and opportunities to plug in at a later point. So it's important that you do those things, especially not even while you're working, but also outside of it, so that you're just not sitting. I will tell you a funny story though. Um, I initially, at one point, just tried to offer that I would work. It didn't cost anybody anything. And they literally just did not want to do it. I don't know what they thought my motives were. It's like, this is free work, people. You don't have to pay me. I am coming in. I'm going to give you all I have and I'm looking forward to it. And some just wouldn't do it. And so I'm not sure if it was liability or whatever, but sometimes you get that instance where you want to give of your time, and then you may have some objection to, like, okay, or why are you just giving up your time? But I hope most people embrace it. Usually they do. And I would find areas where you can just plug in and volunteer in those areas where, organizations that you really find a heart centered type of connection with.
I do love that, Monique, because it's funny, when I took my sabbatical from work, some of the advice I got was from a mentor that I'd had for years was find a nonprofit that resonates with you. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. So it started
Yeah.
with a heart connection, and I was just volunteering at Dress for Success Atlanta. And my
Yes.
pivot was about going from more of a core corporate role. I was, did operations, marketing strategy, and regulatory policy across my career, and I was pivoting to
Yeah.
leadership and executive development. And I noticed that they didn't have any form of advising or coaching. And so I
Mhm.
just started building a program for them, right? And so it was a way that to literally have something tangible on my resume. And I called myself consultant. I wasn't paid for it. But back to your point about relationships, it then gave me an opportunity once I became employed for board service.
Yeah.
And then I built amazing connections that are now friendships as a result of my board service. And one of the women who served on our board joined our board because she was wanting to build her skill in finance. And so she volunteered to serve as our treasurer. And so, there's ways that you
Just
literally,
across.
especially when you've got a smaller nonprofit that's got a clear purpose, but needs smart people to help guide them. So
Yes.
anyway,
Yes.
it was such an awesome experience. And, Monique, you ought to take some time. I know you've been focused on talking to us, but scroll through and read some of these comments. So many folks are appreciating your transparency, your vulnerability, your inspiring words about how you maintain resilience and built your inner self, your outer self. Just so many great comments in the chat. And I also want to point out, so Rhonda had messaged us and said she's got some great resources. I said, please add those to the chat. So she's
Yes.
also just added those to the chat. So folks, I encourage you to take a look at that. Well, Monique, we are just about at the top of the hour. I want to offer just heartfelt thank you for sharing your
Thank
stories
you.
and your insights and advice. It's
I appreciate it, Pam. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I could probably go on and on. Again, I just wanted to reel it in, making sure that I stayed on point. Another good reason for having coaches that help you through, especially if you're a creative and you're a talker like I am, you want to make sure that you keep things succinct. But this was beautiful. I'm so excited that I got to share what I'm actually experiencing with people, and just to let them know that you're not alone, and it's okay to be your authentic self and show up, whether you have the job yet, whether you're looking for the job. Just know that you've got champions out here, and your next great opportunity is right around the corner. And it doesn't matter how long it takes in the in-between. Just know that when you get there, it's going to be all the more uh substantial and wonderful. And I'm cheering for you. I'm cheering for you. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you, Heather and Jennifer.
Great.
Appreciate it. And
Well,
all the great comments.
I know.
I
I'm
mean, like, can
excited
I
to
get a copy of all of this? Like, I'm
and
loving it.
awesome, awesome, awesome. And I also just realized Rhonda had sent the resources just to us host and panelists. So I'm about to repost that in the chat. Heather is going to share what's coming next on Business Over Breakfast. And Monique, thank you so much again. Heather, over to you.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Pam, for leading us as always, and Monique for sharing such a beautiful story and your expertise with us today. We are very grateful to have had you on this morning. As Pam said, my name is Heather Dufault. I am part of the open enrollment team here at the Goizueta Business School, and we also appreciate that you've joined us this morning and shared your morning with us. I want to take just a few minutes and talk a little bit about what's coming up and to reiterate some of the things that Pam mentioned at the beginning of this presentation in regard to some open enrollment programs coming. But next up in August for our Business Over Breakfast series on August 15th, we will have Unlock Team Results by Redesigning Collaboration with Scott Sanchez and Robert Barris. And then I want to just take a few minutes to highlight a couple of programs coming up this fall on our open enrollment schedule. And again, Pam mentioned this earlier. First, the Goizueta Executive Women's Leadership Program. This is a hybrid, immersive experience, and it is focused on elevating your women leaders and inspiring them to fulfill their potential. Again, it's hybrid. It's going to be running this September through October. There are in-person and virtual elements to this program. And then I'm thrilled to announce for those of you who may be right now in your in-between and are considering a transition, our very sought after executive coaching diploma program, we are going to be adding an in-person, a face-to-face cohort starting this fall. Our executive coaching program has been running virtually since COVID. And because of the continued interest, we will have a new offering in person for those who want to come in and be in person with your peers and those you're learning with this fall. So this in-person cohort will run on Thursdays and Fridays, again, October through April of 2025. Please reach out to the email on the screen if you're interested in learning more about this cohort. Registrations for this will be open through August. And you should also have some additional information about this in the chat. So please reach out. We would love to have you participate. So again, thank you so much for spending your morning with us. We are grateful for that, and we do hope that you'll join us again soon. Have a wonderful day.